And it becomes a thing, like, you end up asking, like, why pick up a Game Boy or a Game Boy Color when the Game Boy Advance can play Game Boy Color games and Game Boy games? Like, yeah, fair enough. And you can then be like, why pick up a Game Boy Advance when the DS will play Game Boy Color, will play Game Boy Advance games? And it's like, the DS doesn't play the Game Boy Color games though, or the Game Boy. Right. And in the same token, why pick up the DS when the 3DS will play DS games? It's like, it doesn't play Game Boy Advance games. Although you can get some Game Boy games on the Virtual Console, which isn't so bad. So this is Wet Dry Town, Wet Dry World, which is definitely one of my least favourite levels. I'm not particularly fond of it. But yeah, I have I ended up picking up an AGS 101 model, which actually I think isn't. Yeah, this is the better way actually. The sticker on the back says it's an AGS 001. I think it's actually a refurbished model with the backlight. When I bought it, the seller was actually very clear. The sticker does say AGS 001, but it is a 1. It does have the backlight. That's really nice. It's a nice red case. Which is really neat. It's the shell. It's a nice red Game Boy Advance SP, which I quite like. Looks really nice. And is really good to look at. Playing some of my favourite Game Boy Advance games on there. Oh, one thing really worth noting about this, the water level when you start the level depends on how high you jump into the painting. So that's a neat little trick. Yeah, like some of my favourite Game Boy Advance games on the backlit one, really nice. And the Game Boy Advance, again, as we were mentioning earlier, there are some really good ROM hacks that are worth taking advantage of, which you'll need a flash card for. And even beyond that, like, one of my favourite things is, yeah, I have a flash card for my GBA. And one of my favourite things about it... Yeah, I don't want to go in there again because I don't really like that level, but there is a toad over here with a star. One of my favourite things about having a flash card for the GBA is... Like, the Game Boy Advance is a portable system, and without a flash card you have to decide on... Say you're going out anywhere and you want to take your Game Boy Advance with you. You have to decide on what games to take with you. And it's like, with something like the 3DS or the DS, not so much of a problem because the game cards are actually fairly compact. And almost every case you can get for a DS or a DS Lite, a DS or a 3DS will come with little pouches in the case. Like every case I've ever had for my DS Lite and my 3DS and my 2DS XL, which I have, they all had little pouches in the case for your cartridge, for your little game cards, because they're so much more compact and easier to carry. It's not really the case with the Game Boy Advance. They're a little bulkier, and you end up having to carry like more. You have to carry more to carry the same number of games, and the flash card is just plug it in, and there's your games. You don't have to worry about swapping your cartridges out or carrying multiple cartridges, and it's really convenient, especially for the portable system. And like I say, some of the ROM hacks for it are really good, especially in conjunction with like the Game Boy Advance, the backlit SP, or even the frontlit SP, or playing it on a DS or a DS Lite. After the early complaints on the Game Boy Advance, with a dark screen. A lot of the games started coming out with a brighter colour palette, which isn't so bad until it's the ports of Super Nintendo games. And Super Nintendo games on Game Boy Advance, though ported over, a lot of them have a really brightened colour palette because of that. And with a backlight, it looks very washed out and honestly considerably worse than on Super Nintendo, which is a big shame. And one of the most common ROM hacks on Game Boy Advance is... Oh, come on, just jump on it. What? One of the most common ROM hacks on Game Boy Advance is for these games that were ported from Super Nintendo to restore the colour palette to how it was supposed to be, which is great if you have a backlit system like the AGS 101 or the Game Boy Micro or the DS or DS Lite. It's great. So Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy V, Final Fantasy VI, the Breath of Fire games that were ported over, possibly Donkey Kong Country games might have one. And it's really good because, like I say, with the backlight, the brighter palette looks really washed out. And unfortunately, not every game was like the Game Boy Advance port of Link to the Past. Because the Game Boy Advance port of Link to the Past had an option for the brightness. Where you could choose the brightness level on there. And you could have a brighter level. Right now I need to figure out this. There we are, that's what I'm after. Yeah. And you could set the brightness level to be brighter if you didn't have the backlight. You could set it to be the original Link to the Past colour palette from Super Nintendo, which was great. Although Link to the Past on Game Boy Advance also does have a very popular ROM hack, which removes the voice. Because for some reason, the Game Boy Advance version of Link to the Past added in the young Link voice from Ocarina of Time, which doesn't sound so bad, but every time you swing your sword, it does the sword swing voice, the "yeah" from Link to the Past, from Child Link. And it's worth noting that you will be swinging your sword in Link to the Past way more than you do in Ocarina of Time, and it very quickly becomes tiring. So, you know, it's a very popular ROM hack to remove the voice there. There's also a similar thing for the GBA port of Mario Brothers 2, Mario Brothers World, Mario Brothers 3, Mario World, that just leave the game as is, but remove the voice. Because it's like, if you've ever played the original Super Nintendo versions, it is one of the most irritating things, just how much they'll talk in that. It can be really off-putting. Just removing the voices, simple change, bam. So that's really nice. We have 2 more levels to show off down here. There's Tall Tom Mountain here, which we'll get a few stars in. But yeah, like, having a flash cart for the GBA is heavily recommended, just because of the ease of carrying them around. and also like the 3DS as well as the game cards being a lot more compact and easier to carry around, and a lot of the cases having special pouches for them. You can get yeah, you can. There's the possibility you'll be buying your 3DS games digitally, or you'll be getting stuff off the Virtual Console. Like, especially if you have a new 3DS. Be like, you can have the Super Nintendo games on there. It's like, I have a bunch of stuff from the Virtual Console on my 3DS. On my new 3DS. I didn't actually buy a 3DS until the new 3DS came out. I might have mentioned this in a previous video, but I went with the Vita first, and I spent a good amount of time with the Vita, eventually getting a 3DS. And I was kind of planning to get a 2DS, largely because the 2DS was considerably cheaper than the 3DS, and I do not care about the 3D. But around the time I was considering it, Nintendo announced the new 3DS with Xenoblade Chronicles 3D as an exclusive. And it was like, you know what? I'd like to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3D portable. I was doing a lot of portable gaming at the time, with work. So I did end up picking up the new 3DS. Funny thing, I do have Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, and I played maybe 10 minutes of it. So I have a big problem with starting new games. It's part of the idea behind doing Let's Plays, actually, is incentivize myself, encourage myself to start some new games. Especially, though, RPGs. Like, RPGs, probably one of my favourite, possibly my favourite genre, JRPGs. But the issue is they're so long, so starting any new JRPG is a time commitment. And so it's like, oh, you know, start Xenoblade Chronicles on 3DS, which... It's like, I've heard just how much time Xenoblade Chronicles can take. And having it portable, where it's more accessible to me, yeah, cool. But still, that's a time commitment, that's a time sink. So I haven't actually got round to actually playing it properly yet. But no, like, they announced Super Nintendo games the year after I got my new 3DS. There's new 3DS exclusive Virtual Console games. And I was excited, like, Super Nintendo games portable. My first chance to get into some of those Super Nintendo games that I've never played, like Earthbound. I didn't have a Wii U at the time, and they put Earthbound on there. It was like my first chance to actually play Earthbound without emulating it. And it's not that I was against emulation, it's just when I was emulating stuff, there was other stuff that was higher on my priority list than Earthbound. And that said, I still haven't played Earthbound past On It, or Want It, or however you're supposed to pronounce it. Because I know all of the, like the main towns in Earthbound are numbered, like On It and this Foreside, which the main reason I remember that is because it's a stage in Melee and they brought it back in Smash Ultimate. But it was a cool thing. There's Super Metroid on 3DS, which was like, yeah, I could do with spending more time with Super Metroid. Mario World on 3DS, yeah. Link to the Past on 3DS, yeah. It's a shame that the 3DS Virtual Console just kind of, not the 3DS Virtual Console, the Super Nintendo side of the Virtual Console never really got that far. There's a load of Oh, this is going to take a while. There's a bunch of Super Nintendo games that never came out on there that I would have loved. Like Final Fantasy VI, which we did eventually get the chance to play that in Europe on the Super Nintendo Mini. Prior to that, it was play it on the PlayStation, or play it on the Game Boy Advance, or God help you, play it on the PC or Android. Super Mario RPG never came out on the 3DS Virtual Console. Chrono Trigger never came out on the Virtual Console and 3DS. Secret of Mana didn't. There's a bunch of games that just were left off. That's a big shame. Right, Tiny Huge Island. At this point, I really should go for Earthbound, but I am, because I really want to do Mother 3. It's like, yeah, that's another big, there's another big reason to get a flashcard for the GBA. Some of the fan translations, like Mother 3. Like I said, there's nothing like playing a game on the intended hardware. It's like, I want to play Mother 3. I've heard excellent things about it, but I want to do Earthbound first. And I need to get round to it. Really do. So the gimmick of Tiny Huge Island is there are two paintings. There's the small one, there's the huge one. And it determines what state the island will be in when you go in. So now the island is huge, or we're small, or whatever. Thank you. Yeah, I do want to get around to Earthbound. Mother 3, yeah, though. Fan translations, for me, like one of the biggest reasons tips off the Huge Island. One of the biggest reasons to have... Oh, no. One of the biggest reasons to have flashcards. Because there are so many good games that don't come out outside Japan that are of interest to me. I'm a big fan of the Shin Megami Tensei series. But prior to Lucifer's Call on the PlayStation 2, prior to that, there's a star that goes over there. What is it that I'm after? No, well, we'll leave that for now and go and get a different star. Prior to Lucifer's Call, the Shin Megami Tensei series, A, didn't really come out in English. There was the PS1 version of Persona, which did come out in English, was heavily butchered and Americanized under the name Revelations Persona. It was heavily butchered, and also didn't come out in Europe anyway, so yeah. But it's like, Lucifer's Call is Shin Megami Tensei 3. Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 were Super Famicom games, and they both have full fan translations at this point. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to play them. So at some point I really need to get round to those. And also recently, there's some really fun news for Shin Megami Tensei. The fan translation for Shin Megami Tensei If, which was the third game on the Super Famicom kit, has been finished and released, which is really neat. And If is kind of the precursor to the Persona series. In particular, the high school setting of Persona comes from Shin Megami Tensei If. So I want to get round to that at some point. So we have the rematch with Cooper the Quick here, and he is actually way tougher now. Like, we easily beat him the first time. This time, definitely going to be heavily abusing the long jump. I had a lot of trouble with this as a kid, because Cooper is way faster now. And then there's this, which long jumping here probably ain't the best idea. And he's like right behind us. Even with like abusing the long jump, so definitely trickier.